Good evening, everybody. How are y'all doing tonight? This is the first of 4 town halls we're going to be doing related to the no commercial vehicle parking. Tonight is actually being recorded and broadcasted live on YouTube as well. So just know that at the end when you're asking questions, this is going to be live on YouTube. We're doing this so that people who can't make it, they can watch. It'll be recorded. We're going to post all these attachments here on the web as well, so you can go back and look at them and watch this recording for any additional information. We'll have one also in Spanish that will be recorded next week as well, and then we'll be heading to both the west side and the east side of the city to do the same presentation. So thank you all so much for coming out tonight and your interest in what's going on with the city. So I'm going to introduce myself and then my teammates here. They're each going to have a role this evening. I'm the city manager. My name is Lazo Palco. I'm appointed by the governing body. We do have one member here tonight, the vice mayor, Ms. Mensing. Thank you for joining us. I'm joined here by Calvin Odell. He's the Director of Community Development Department, Chief Lugo, and Captain Dorr, both from the Police Department. Okay, so tonight I want to give a background, kind of what brought us to this point, a little bit of background about the law, the deliberative process that took place, a timeline, and other components as well. I want to describe the law and really lay out that there's 2 different aspects, and I know that could be confusing at times, but I want to kind of clear that up, what the two components of the law are, and what are the 2 entities that are going to be enforcing against that. And then I'm going to turn it over to the PD. They're going to give examples of what violations they'll be ticketing and towing once we begin enforcement. And then we'll turn it over to Calvin, who's going to go over the process for the zoning violations for commercial vehicles on private property. And then at the end, we'll just do kind of a quick recap of all the different attachments here. I'll bring up another issue. And for tonight only, we are going to go over some backup slides related to the signs, because I know we've had some questions about the signs as well. So we'll get that on public record, kind of some background about the signs as well. So I'm not here to debate the merits of the law. I'm not a lawmaker. I make recommendations to the governing body. I'll go over what recommendations I went over at that time. But the law has been decided. It's been decided since 2021. My goal tonight is really just to inform residents about the law, what's happening, and how you can prepare yourself so you don't receive a ticket or you don't receive a zoning violation. It's really to arm you with the information that you guys need here to avoid any issues going forward. So some background, really a timeline. So in 2020, June of 2020, I was doing town halls on a commercial development initiative here in the downtown, and I was getting a lot of questions related to code enforcement, the lack of parking in general in the city, the lack of parking enforcement in the city. They're all off topic, but I promised residents at that time I would come back and I would do a separate town hall on these issues. And we did that in September of 2020. We held a specific town hall. Unfortunately, it was virtual because of COVID, but we live streamed it. We took real-time questions at that time about all the different code enforcement concerns that residents have, the lack of parking, especially on the west side, the lack of parking enforcement, and after that as well, there was elections, and people came in kind of with a demand for ramped up code enforcement as well, and that's kind of some of the reasons why you saw a kind of ramp up in parking enforcement, the parking enforcement vehicle, the ramping up of code enforcement, as well as kind of the demand from the public from that town hall and from the elections that year as well, that kind of drove us to that point. And one of the biggest topics of concern was just the lack of parking and what we can do to address that very issue. So we followed up with some additional meetings in December. We looked at speeding, which was an issue that was brought up as well, and also building the parking enforcement division, and we got authorization to hire one parking enforcement officer as part of that process. We also then in January of 2021, we went over we did some governing body work sessions where we went over the results of the town hall that we did in September. I presented a lot of background information. I went over and recapped kind of the options that I provided the governing body, my recommendations, and I'll show you what those were tonight here. And it was a great discussion about all the different aspects of parking especially, and what we could do to help address the parking issue. And so the main decision, a few things were decided that night, but the main decision was to start off with the prohibition of commercial vehicles parking on residential streets or city streets on residential districts, but the permitting of 2 of those vehicles to park on private property. That was the decision. I'll kind of go over why that was decided as well. And then we started some public hearings in March of 2021 to discuss the additional parking capacity requirements for any time you have a new addition to your home, requiring some more parking as part of that prospective law. And I'll talk about a little bit of that as well to help kind of clear up some of the confusion. So in spring of 2021, in preparation for the governing body making the decision that they wanted to do the prohibition on no commercial vehicles, the law hadn't passed yet, but we knew that was the direction the governing body was going, so we started talking about that in our capital improvement plan about how we would tackle that project specifically with sign installations. And then we held 3 public hearings. So not only did we do the town halls and the governing body work session, we also did 3 separate public hearings on this issue, one of them from a zoning standpoint and one of them from a law enforcement standpoint as well. And then both ordinances from the zoning perspective on private property and then the law enforcement perspective were both adopted in October of 2021, and you have the attached agenda and ordinances as one of your attachments tonight. And then in the spring, we got the RFP issued for the sign installation. Unfortunately, the quotes came back at $1.2 million, and we had budgeted $250,000, and we didn't want to spend $1.2 million on signs. So we went back to the drawing board, and we first decided to actually do a design. So we did an RFP for design. We did a separate design that was completed in December of 2022, and we came up with a game plan for installing these signs, which we started in spring of 2023. Overall, we came under budget, under $250,000 budget. The original budget that we had was $250,000. Remember, that first quote came back at $1.2 million. We ended up doing all the work in-house for under $250,000. So we saved taxpayers a significant amount of money with that. So these were the list of options that I provided to the governing body when we did the town halls on code enforcement, parking enforcement, the lack of parking, and the following governing body work sessions. So we talked about building a parking enforcement division. You can see that, adding some more code enforcement capacity as well. So kind of building that capacity to go out and actually ticket people, cite people for violations. There were really 3-4 options for helping out with the parking shortage. One of them was a permit parking, where neighbors in one street can come together and petition the city to establish a permit parking for their street, where only those residents who live on that street will be assigned parking tags to be able to park in that street. And if you don't live on that street, you wouldn't be allowed to park in that. That was one of the issues or one of the options that was evaluated. Another was decal parking. Requiring overnight for anyone parking in our city to have a city decal. One of the concerns we were getting from residents were county residents were parking on city streets, and that was taking up a lot of their parking spaces as well. So we evaluated that perhaps maybe we should just require you to have a city decal if you want to park in our city overnight. And then we looked at public parking lots, turning some of our parking lots or city parking lots into public parking lots as well for people to expand parking capacity as well. And then those were 3, 4, 5 there. And then also number 9, so prohibiting commercial vehicles. That was ultimately what was decided. That, again, there was a perception that between 20 to 30 to 40% of cars, especially on the west side, parking on the streets were commercial vehicles. So if we prohibited that, that would theoretically open up spots on the street for residents to park in residential districts. That was ultimately the one that was decided. I'm gonna go over here. So kind of progress on some of these. We went ahead and we did the parking enforcement division. We now have 2 parking enforcement officers. We added a half-time code enforcement officer. One of the things we also passed was number 7. So that is prospective. So it doesn't apply to any additions that were done prior to 2021. But any additions post-2021, if you wanted to do an addition to your home of a 10% or more, you're required to show that you could park that on your property. Now, to do that, if you had to do that by violating the driveway widths, then that permit would not be issued and you would not be able to do your addition. So that was a prospective law that was passed in 2021. I know there's some confusion about that, whether that applies to homes previously who've done additions. No, it's just for any additions going forward. If you want to do an addition, you're not going to get approved if you can't expand your driveway capacity within the laws of what your driveway capacity is. We talked about reducing limitations on driveway width, because right now you can only have a driveway width of 20 feet or 20%, whichever is greater. That was discussed back then, and the governing body at that time decided not to take that, do anything with that law. They are looking at that now, and the recent decision on that one is to expand the driveway. I said 20 feet. Now it's going to be 27 feet for those properties that have a front yard of 100 feet width or more. And that's very similar to the law of City of Manassas. They allow 24 feet, we're gonna do 27 feet. So we are working on number 8 as well. Number 10, we did hire an attorney to help us with some code analysis as well to expand our capacity to enforce, whether it's the grass ordinance, the inoperable vehicles, trash. We've done a lot over the last few years, but we had to start with some code amendments to enable that. Public education, there's a committee that was created by the governing body called the Community Maintenance Working Group. They've done a lot to engage residents on all these different code enforcement issues as part of a public education campaign. And then one of the things we did was implement a new software at our police department for ticketing called Brazos that allowed us to actually expand ticketing capacity for parking violations. So like I said, at the end of the day, number 9 was the one that these 3 were the ones that were seriously considered: the permit parking, the decal parking, and prohibiting commercial vehicles. It was thought that prohibiting commercial vehicles made more sense because it's intended to be a residential neighborhood. So prohibiting commercial vehicles parking on residential streets made more sense. It could free up parking for residents, so we didn't have to do the permit parking or the decal parking requirements. We'll evaluate over a few years how that program works, and then the governing body will reconsider any additional items beyond that. So one of the reasons why the governing body chose this is because it's not a unique law. If you look at the rest of the region, pretty much everyone else does this, right? So for example, Prince William County, all these jurisdictions prohibit commercial parking in residential areas, right? They all differ in how they regulate commercial vehicles in residential districts on your home, right? So look at Prince William County. They won't allow you to do it on your driveway, right? They'll do it, you have to do it in your garage. Now, I can't speak to the enforcement of these, how robust enforcement is in these jurisdictions. Just like in our jurisdiction, right, enforcement was scaled back. Post-Great Recession, staffing levels were cut pretty dramatically, so enforcement was scaled back for a lot of code enforcement. I can't speak to how aggressively these jurisdictions actually enforce their laws. All I'm telling you is what the laws are on the book for these jurisdictions. Manassas City, they don't really have a prohibition on how many cars, commercial cars, you can park on your driveway garage. So that's a little bit more lenient from our neighbor. Fairfax County, again, they only allow 1. We're allowing 2. So you can see there's a different array of policies across the region, but what we all share in common is that all of us prohibit commercial vehicles from being parked in residential districts. So that's why that was, again, the option for the governing body. It wasn't a unique law. This was something that was standard across Northern Virginia, so we were just aligning our laws to the rest of our neighbors. So description of the law, I'm going to go over kind of the different components of the law, and really to simplify this, there's actually 2 laws that were passed. One of them involves the police, one of them involves the Community Development Department, okay? The one that involves the police is in the Traffic and Parking Code of Section 24-51, and with that, that's the one that's saying on public streets, on city-owned streets, right, in residential neighborhoods, you can no longer park commercial vehicles and certain non-commercial vehicles that I'll define here in the next few slides. And if you do, that's going to be enforced by the police department via ticketing and towing. Okay, so that regulates what you can do on the streets, or specifically what you can't do on the streets. The second law that was passed has to do with your property, right? How many commercial vehicles can you park on your property, your residential property, in a residential district? And that says that you're permitted no more than 2 of these permitted commercial vehicles on your residential property, and specifically on your driveway. So technically, that law reads right now, if you have a garage, you can park your commercial vehicles in there, and that wouldn't count towards the 2. So technically, you could do 3 or 4, depends how much you can fit in your garage, but it's really your driveways or your kind of the open air, non-enclosed structures that we're regulating, right? How many of those can you fit on your property? And that's 2. And that's not enforced by police. Again, police don't enforce civil code violations on private property. They enforce crime and traffic and parking. That's Calvin's division, the Community Development Department, specifically the Development Services Division, enforces that as a zoning violation. So that houses planning and zoning in that office, and this is considered a zoning violation, which the enforcement involves going to court. And there's a lot of cases that we manage related to code and zoning violations. Last year we issued almost 1,400 citations across the city. We brought multiple cases to courts before judges, so there's been a ramp up in enforcement of code and zoning violations from the demand of the public in 2020 and 2021, and the governing body at that time as well. So for on-street parking, kind of the definitions, and I'm not going to spend too much time on this. This is kind of self-explanatory. I'm going to turn over to PD and Calvin here to kind of go over the specific examples so you guys understand. At the end, we'll open it up to questions if you have specific questions, right, about a specific type of vehicle, or if you have a picture you want to show us so we can make an interpretation either now or later as well. But you can see the different components of the definitions. You're talking about weight. Please note that we have an agenda item right now for this one. For the 9,000, we're looking to increase that to 10,000. It just makes it easier for enforcement purposes because certain trucks 10,000 pounds or more have the truck designation by the DMV. So that's likely to change, but you can see the different components here of commercial vehicles. Even just having a name of a business makes you consider that vehicle a commercial vehicle as well and regulated under this. Food trucks, if you have a truck, again, that has carrying construction or commercial equipment, that's also included here as well, even if there's no name on the commercial business name on that truck. Excuse me. The vans, this is another big one that we see a lot, right? If you have a van that lacks side windows, that's going to be in violation as well. And again, you're going to see multiple example pictures here tonight of what we're talking about. So the specific prohibition is that you can't park these commercial vehicles as defined in the previous slides on city streets between 8 p.m. and 8 a.m. Monday through Friday and weekends. So you can park them on streets 8 a.m. through 8 p.m. Monday through Friday, right? And our police, if you have some plumber or something coming in, right, and they're parked in front of your house, we're gonna go and check to see what's going on. And if they're actually doing work in your home, right, we're gonna be reasonable here. We're not gonna be ticketing companies that are coming out to service your property, right? But again, in general, you can't abuse that law and just start parking on the street between these times, or else you're going to be ticketed and towed at your expense. So these are the signs, examples of the signs that have gone up to that effect. Okay. The exception to this is if you have a house where you don't have a driveway, you can be eligible to apply for the city, and I think we brought some applications here tonight. Again, only if you do not have a driveway on your property can you apply to get these permit tags for 2 vehicles to park on the street. If you have these tags on your car, you're not going to get a ticket. But again, that only applies if you don't have a driveway. That's the only carve out that the law has. Now, I talked about right now the definition of commercial vehicle as it relates to the on-street parking that gets ticketed by police. For those vehicles that are going to be on your property, again, that's enforced from a zoning standpoint, we define what a permitted vehicle is, and that's this definition, right? Again, that 9,000 pounds may increase to 10,000 pounds. That's under consideration right now by the governing body, but you have a separate definition of a permitted vehicle, so that's important. So look at those 2 laws and understand between what's a permitted vehicle for you to park on your property and what is a commercial vehicle defined in the code for on-street violations. And that's why we provide that tonight. We also provide you a copy of the ordinance so you can see that as well. This is just a simple chart that we found that kind of gives some examples, right, of weight classes and types of vehicles. And you can see class 1 through class 6 vehicles and weight categories. If the law is passed by the governing body, this is the simplest breakdown right here. Green, you're good, right? Unless you have some commercial signage or you have a construction rack on your vehicle, right? That's going to be the exception here. But from a weight class, these are kind of examples of what we're talking about, and you have that in the presentation in front of you as well. But now, more importantly, I'm going to turn it over to the chief. He's going to go over specific examples that we see in Manassas Park that we're going to start ticketing. And actually, before I go over that, I want to go over kind of the timeline for enforcement here. So we unbagged all the signs. So people have seen the signs now on streets saying no commercial vehicles permitted, right? But we're not ticketing right now, right? We're trying to give people as much advance warning as possible. In January, we're going to start ticketing, but there's not going to be a fine associated. It's going to be a warning, right, to not do this. And from Calvin's team, from a zoning standpoint, it's going to be a door hanger, just saying, hey, we're providing you some information that you're in violation of a law, right? We're not taking any action. We're just letting you know about this. And then in February, so a month after that, if you're still violating, right, then you'll get ticketed by the police for on-street violations. And if you have on-property violations, you'll get a notice of violation, notice of zoning violation, right, from Calvin's department. That's February. Then March, if you're still in violation, right, the car is still in violation, they've been ticketed, police will now tow that vehicle. And in case of on-property violations, Calvin's team will now start taking you to court to get a court injunction against your vehicle, okay? That's gonna be kind of the rollout of enforcement, how it's gonna work, because we wanna give everyone plenty of time. We wanna start off with warnings, because we know it's hard to keep track of everything that's happening with laws, with even when we do town halls, when we do public hearings, right? Everyone's very busy in their life, and we got that. And that's why we wanna take all these steps to give everyone advance notice, including putting up these signs right now and not doing anything about it. Not ticketing, just putting up the signs so people know that this is up there, right? This is coming. And then even in January, just giving warnings to everyone after that, because we want to give plenty of time for people to make accommodations. And one of your attachments tonight gives examples of places where you can park your commercial vehicle, and there's even one in our city as well that's from our research, right? That's not conclusive, that's just from our staff looking at different rental options for where you can rent a parking space for your commercial vehicle beyond the company that owns that commercial vehicle providing that parking for you. But let me hand it over to the chief here.
Good evening, everyone. The next few slides, you're going to notice some examples either that we came across or our parking enforcement, our officers located within our residence streets. So as you can see, the box trucks, the trucks with the commercial signage on it, the trailers, and that white truck there, it could be a DMV error, but it's actually way over 10,000 pounds. So we're going to notify the owner that he needs to either call DMV or find out if that vehicle is really over 10,000 pounds. The vans, if they don't have windows in the back, are considered commercial vehicles under the Virginia Code, so all those vehicles would be considered commercial. And with the ladders on it, it is also an indication that it's being used for commercial, not for personal. And in the trailer, the enclosed trailers, can't park them on the street either. These are some more examples of the dump truck there, commercial. We kind of blurred out the commercial sign on the side of the door. Boats are not prohibited from parking on the street also, so those who have to go on the driveway. Some more examples, you'd see the trailer, which is prohibited, and then the other truck is actually a commercial vehicle, and then the two bottom ones are considered commercial, and then the utility truck there that has all the doors on it. Some more examples that we've located: dump truck, pickup truck for the ladders, and then obviously the one with the dump truck and the shredder on the back side of the truck. Some more panel van trailers, and then some more commercial vehicles, dump trucks that we've located. Some more examples. Some more vans, work vans, both of them, the commercial part that was blurred out, and then the boat, and then the recreational vehicle that's parked there. And this is what we had right here. Obviously commercial, you can see the guys working there, but these are all considered commercial vehicles because of the ladders and what they're doing. That's all I have.
Good evening, I'm Calvin Odell, the Director of Community Development. As Laszlo mentioned, we're going to discuss a lot of the permitted commercial vehicles here, and permitted commercial vehicles are the smaller commercial vehicles or smaller recreation vehicles, smaller boats. So recreational vehicles and boats less than 15,000 pounds, and commercial vehicles currently less than 9,000 pounds, but as Laszlo mentioned, it's probably going to change to 10,000 pounds.
And these are permitted vehicles on property, not on street.
These vehicles are considered permitted by the zoning code to be placed on property as long as there's no more than 2 of them on the property. And again, we're talking about driveways here. It is illegal to park vehicles on impervious surfaces. So when you're parking a vehicle in your backyard and it's just on grass or mud, that's already a violation anyways. This panel van is less than 9,000 pounds. It would be permitted to be parked in the driveway if it was just a single vehicle or was just a single vehicle with another vehicle. This commercial vehicle is displaying the name of a business. Again, anything with an advertising wrap, anything with the name of a business entity on it If it's displaying a business on the vehicle, it's considered a commercial vehicle. So even though this is a passenger vehicle, it's displaying business decals, it's gonna be considered a violation on the street, but you would be able to park this in your driveway, and up to 2 of these in your driveway. Again, this truck is probably gross vehicle weight less than 9,000 pounds, but it's clearly displaying the name of a business entity on it is for commercial purposes. It's advertising a business, so this would be permitted on your driveway, but it would not be permitted on the street. Again, another pickup truck, another vehicle less than 9,000 pounds, but also displaying the emblem and initials of a company, be considered a commercial vehicle. You could not park this on the street, but you could park this in your driveway. This dump truck, if it says it's over 9,000 pounds, this would not be permitted on your property. If this was less than 9,000 pounds, it would be, but if this is over 9,000 pounds gross vehicle weight, this is not permitted on the street or your driveway. This dump truck, due to its weight, would not be permitted on the street or the driveway. Commercial pickup truck, this is a commercial pickup truck because it has permanent ladder racks, it has ladders on it. This is clearly being used for construction purposes. This would be permitted on a driveway, but would not be permitted on the street. This is a commercial pickup truck displaying the Xfinity logo. This would be permitted on a driveway, but would not be permitted on the street. Trailers, again, as long as it is a trailer that's less than 15,000 pounds, it would be permitted on your driveway, but it is considered a commercial vehicle, would not be permitted on the street. And a panel van would be permitted on your driveway as long as it's less than 9,000 pounds. Here we have a truck, commercial truck and a commercial trailer. If you wanted to park both of these in your driveway, you would be at your limit, but you could do it. Neither one of these is a non-permitted commercial vehicle. Neither one of them is over 9,000 pounds. So you could park both of these in your driveway, but then you would be at the limit for commercial vehicles on your property. This vehicle right here, ladder racks, ladders on it. Don't know if it would qualify as a panel van because it has at least one window, but clearly this is a commercial vehicle, can be parked in the driveway, but could not be parked on the street. And again, a panel van, as long as it's less than 9,000 pounds, can be parked on your driveway, but cannot be parked on the street. Trailer, this is a truck that would not qualify as a commercial vehicle. This is just a standard passenger pickup truck, but the trailer is a commercial vehicle, so you could park this assembly in your driveway and it would count as one commercial vehicle just because of the trailer. And the watercrafts less than 15,000 pounds are permitted vehicles, but this cannot be parked on the street, would have to be parked in your driveway.
We also make the point here, you can't put out cones on the street either. That's not allowed. Again, another watercraft, clearly less than 15,000 pounds, but still considered a commercial vehicle, cannot be parked on the street, but can be parked on the driveway. Here's a boat less than 15,000 pounds. That's a handsome boat. Has to be parked in your driveway though. Here's a watercraft. This one probably getting up there in weight, but still less than 15,000 pounds, would be able to be parked in your driveway, but not on the street. And here's an RV, a small recreational vehicle, less than 15,000 pounds, okay to park on your driveway, but can't be on the street. And this vehicle is licensed for commercial use. This is not permitted on the driveway or the street. This is a commercial, truly defined as a commercial vehicle, not a light commercial vehicle. This is a food truck. This food truck would exceed the weight limit. It's not permitted, or is for storing foods and beverages, so is not allowed in the driveway or on the street. Flatbed tow truck, this exceeds the weight limit. This is not permitted on the street or the driveway.
And a tractor truck is not a permitted commercial vehicle. It's not allowed on the street or the driveway. And this is a piece of construction equipment that is also defined as a non-permitted commercial vehicle, so it's not allowed on the street or the driveway.
So I hope you've been able to grab a copy of the slide deck. We also have 6 different attachments that I lay out here that's useful for background and additional information, additional questions you may have, and even questions from tonight. So attachment 1 looks like this. Please grab one. This is what was presented at that 2020 town hall that I did. It gives a pretty good comprehensive overview of what the city, what we were doing at that time from a parking enforcement, code enforcement standpoint, what the issues were, what the laws are, what the challenges are for the city. This FAQ, attachment 2, was associated with that, so we received a lot of questions from residents in lead up to that town hall, and we provided this document. We posted it online at that time that had some thorough answers to those questions as well, so it's good background information as well. Attachment 3 was for that governing body work session in 2021, where the decision was made to go with the no commercial vehicle ban. It kind of shows the deliberation process, the types of questions that the governing body and residents were asking, that the staff provided clarifications. These are long documents, but they provide some useful background information that we took a long time kind of filling out so that we can provide you all the information you need to better understand what's going on here. This attachment 4 was the agenda item with the ordinances from October 2021 when the law was approved. This is what we brought to the governing body for a vote. So it gives you that background. It has a background memo along with the actual ordinances as well. Attachment 5 is what we talked about, our simple research for areas where you can rent out parking spaces for your commercial vehicle. But again, please do your own research as well if you need accommodations. And then attachment 6, maybe the most important one. These were the questions. Sarah put out a survey here over the last few months in preparation for this town hall, and we got a lot of questions from residents, and we provide the answers here for a lot of those questions. So we hope this is some helpful reading to better understand this issue and answer any questions that people may have. Another thing to bring up is right now the governing body is deliberating what to do with backyards, right? So a lot of people are parking cars on backyards. To Calvin's point, that's allowed, but it has to be on a paved surface. It can't just be on grass. So what the governing body is considering right now is what do we want to do with that, right? Do we want to designate a certain percentage of your backyard as permitted for parking? Do we want to limit the number of vehicles allowed on parking? The reason why I'm bringing this out tonight is they asked me to do so to solicit your feedback, right? Please inform the governing body kind of what your opinions are on backyard parking, because they want to hear from you all as well. So that's going to be decided on here over the next couple months. Ideally, we want to decide this before this commercial parking ban is fully enforced, so that no one paves their backyard in anticipation of that to fit more cars there, and then we pass this law, and unfortunately they're going to have to then address that. We never want to put a resident in that kind of situation. So please let your governing body know what your thoughts are on this matter. You can even discuss it tonight when we open it up for questions. And then tonight, it's going to be exception. Normally we would stop here and open up to questions, but I do want to go over kind of the background for the signs project, because we did receive some questions on the signs that have gone up. But I want to start off with these signs are not because we think people can't understand laws or anything like that. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do, we understand that 99% of residents understand, right? They can read a sign, they'll get it. They only need like one sign, probably for the entrance of a subdivision. The purpose of these signs is for when we go before a judge, so there's no question that the person is aware that you can't park that commercial vehicle there. So we'll go over kind of some of the background. Calvin will talk about kind of the capital component of that, the background of the signs. I'll cap it with kind of our review of what we did with the signs as well.
All right, so in June 22nd, 2022, we issued our solicitation for proposals to get engineering firms to study the city, study our residential streets and our residential neighborhoods, and to give us sort of an indefensible or a defensible, legally defensible mechanism to enforce this ordinance. So the ordinance was passed prohibiting commercial vehicles, but we needed signs in place, and we needed those signs to be legally defensible. So the study included analysis of all of our existing signage in an attempt to sort of co-locate these signs so we didn't have to put up entirely new poles. We needed a hard copy map for our crew or for a contractor to follow, to say these are where the signs will go, to keep the spacing as approximately even as possible and avoid other conflicts. And the study also had to propose some options for actually the content on the sign. And all of that had to conform with the MUTCD, which is the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices. That's what we follow when pretty much all entities in America follow when we're trying to put up traffic control signs or parking control signs. All right, so they had to create a base map showing all the streets and the target land use, and that's where you get your residential areas. This only applies to the residential areas. They had to define the sign placement, and they had to create a map showing optimal sign placement. And again, this was a long process because we wanted something that was defensible. And a lot of times people would say, well, if I can't see it from exactly where I parked and read it from where I parked, then I shouldn't have to pay a ticket on it. But that would be a sign sometimes, depending on the curvature of the road, every 40, 50 feet. And we'd have 5,000 signs in the city. But they were asked to look at options like that, like what it would take to put signs that close together, how many signs would that be, how many signs would it be spaced out a little bit. And identify the sign specifications, give us what needs to be on there to be defensible in court, and give us what needs to be on there to comply with the MUTCD. And then submit some subtasks for city approval, and then conduct field reviews to make sure that everything they're looking at in GIS and Google Earth and everything actually exists in reality in the field. And then compare those maps of sign placement locations to the existing sign infrastructure, look for those opportunities to co-locate signs to try to save the city some time and money, and then update the proposed placement, send it back to the city for review, and then give us a quantity and a number of signs so that we can start preparing to order materials or bring a contractor on board to install them. They identified the existing residential areas of the city, broke the city out into quadrants, and identified all the qualifying streets by their residential land use, and proper street ownership. Again, this is only public streets. This is only streets owned by the city of Manassas Park. If you're in a private subdivision that maintains its own streets, this does not apply. Sign placement, again, they were looking at multiple options. Sign placement could have looked a lot like this, and I think this was 6,800 signs throughout the city. But again, completely defensible in court. You certainly could read the sign from wherever you parked, but kind of a bit of sign pollution and not something that anybody was really a fan of. This was every 30 to 60 feet. Sign placement that was preferred was to look at spacing them every 250 to 450 feet. And the reason there's a variation there is because people have driveways, people have mailboxes, there are side roads and intersections. You can't always stick with a firm number. You have to give yourself some flexibility. So it was decided to go between 250 and 450 foot increments, and that was approximately 800 signs. The sign placement process, the MUTCD talks about gateway signs. So anywhere that you enter the city, putting a larger sign that indicates that there is the presence of such a law that applies to this entire area you're entering into. So we did place gateway signs at every entrance to the city, every entrance to a residential neighborhood in the city. So those gateway signs sort of, as people enter into Manassas Park, they understand that there's this law in Manassas Park, and then as they're driving along the streets looking for a place to park, they're reminded every 250 to 450 feet that this parking restriction exists. As far as sign content, there were some different options. We remember we're doing this with just a certain level of permission. You can park commercial vehicles on the street during normal business hours so that people can have their homes serviced by contractors and things like that. People can do move-ins, and they won't be bothered with tickets. But we had to somehow capture all the pertinent data. So you had the option to put accept Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. And then the other one gets a little more crowded when you start saying no commercial vehicles Monday through Friday, 8 p.m. to 8 a.m., weekends, holidays. It's a lot to put on a sign. So there was some deliberation about which option to go with, but ultimately it was decided whichever one has the least amount of verbiage on it, so it's easier to take in. And these were alternates to the gateway signs. Again, the same thing. Are you doing it as an exception, which has less language on the sign, or are you actually putting the allowed parking, which is more language on the sign?
Okay, so Public Works went ahead and implemented the 800 sign option that was approved based off the design engineering, but we wanted to go and check out every sign to make sure it made sense. So the team that you see here, along with the other staff members, we went out and looked at every single sign to make sure that it made sense, right? And so I want to kind of give an example here. So if I'm on this street, right, I don't live in this city, and I don't know, this is on public streets. I can say, hey, it only, if I didn't have these signs here, and then they're so close, I can say, hey, I thought if I parked here, I thought they was just for this street, not for this street, right? That was kind of one of the components that the engineer provided to us, to make sure that as you enter every street, you let people know that this law applies to this street as well, not just that subdivision. So we went out to make sure that it made sense and that we got rid of any signs that were too excessive. So if you drove down Denver Drive, there were way too many. It wasn't needed, right? And in other areas, unfortunately, there wasn't enough. So the engineering report was not complete, right? There was some gaps that we had to fill in. So at the end, we ended up removing about 25 signs. I want to say 7 of them were on Denver Drive. That was the area with the most. We moved signs, so we didn't add, but we moved from one location to the other to make it make more sense, right? We try to use existing poles as much as possible, and then unfortunately we had to add to new locations that were missed, such as Andrew Drive, which didn't have any, but which has a lot of commercial vehicles if you see it, and that's a residential area as well. So in the end, we had to add about 30 new locations, 15 of which were existing poles. So that's kind of the sign review. Again, to go back now, we want to turn it over to you all to see if there's any questions that you have for us, that you need any clarifications based off of what was presented tonight. And please feel free to come up to this microphone. If you can state your name and your address, and let us know any questions or anything we need to clarify here.
Hey, Tyler Regula, 281 Mosby Drive. Question regarding the equipment here. Are we allowed to park in a garage and have that not considered, or can it not be on the property at all?
Yeah, as long as it's housed in a garage, it's, again, the reason for zoning regulations is to maintain the aesthetics of it, the intents of the district. So these types of things inside of a garage, just like the restriction applies to things that are visible outside on paved surfaces, things that can be parked in the garage. Same way Laszlo was mentioning earlier, you could probably fit a couple commercial vehicles in your garage if you didn't have anything. We're gonna base our zoning determination on what's visible on the property, on the driveway. We're not gonna come knock on your door and say, can we see in your garage, your neighbor said you had a couple commercial vehicles in there. That's
Gotcha,
not gonna
yeah.
happen.
So the second one, I know it's still in discussions with the governing body, but the percentage coverage in the backyard, that's specific to driving surface only, so it wouldn't include paved patios, anything like that?
So most zoning ordinances do not differentiate between types of hardscape. They simply are looking at pervious surface versus impervious surface. Again, this has only been, briefly discussed at a few governing body meetings. The language that would be proposed by staff, if it's similar to other jurisdictions, is probably going to include all types of hardscape, which would not differentiate between driveways, patios. It's buildings, structures, impervious surfaces. They're all usually treated the same under zoning code.
Thank you, that's all I got.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Christy Newman, I live at 121 Evans Street, but I also have a house at 120 Evans Street. So there's a couple of things I'm asking because I'm confused. My own personal vehicle is over 10,000 pounds. so therefore I cannot park it on the street.
If it's over 10,000 pounds, it qualifies as a commercial vehicle.
But it's
by the
not a
ordinance.
commercial vehicle,
But
it's
it's-
just a Chevy.
So the definition of commercial vehicle includes also certain non-commercial vehicles are part of that definition if you look at the code.
So the definition of commercial vehicle also includes recreational vehicles over 15, or recreational vehicles, boats, trailers, things like that. Those are not commercial vehicles. A boat usually doesn't have any commercial purpose. A lot of trailers just have utility purpose, not commercial purpose, but they're
That's not
defined
the
as
same.
commercial.
A trailer's used for a trailer. This is something I drive to and from work every day. It's not like I just use it to pull my boat, or I'm pulling my boat. But anyways, so with not being able to have commercial vehicles that we own, I was the one that had I had the tractor trailers. So when we originally came here to Manassas Park back in, I don't know, 80 whatever, with 120 Evans Street, that driveway, there's two driveways on that house, it's on the corner. That driveway was put in to withhold the weight of the tractor trailer. So you're saying if you have a commercial vehicle that's in the garage, it's okay, because we have a garage big enough that tractor trailer fit up in, it can go in there?
That, I'm gonna, so I don't think you've actually covered this in the language. I don't
No, I
think-
haven't, that's what I'm stating.
No, I said I don't think the zoning text actually covers this. We're getting into a discussion on interpretation by the zoning administrator, and I am not the zoning administrator. I am the director, but I'm not the zoning administrator. So those kind of things are usually addressed by a formal interpretation or request for interpretation, where the zoning administrator deliberates the question being posed and gives a formal response, and that has the force of creating precedent. I can't do that. I'm not the zoning administrator for the city, so even if I told you something, it would be wrong.
If you can,
It wouldn't be something that could be in.
If you can leave us your contact information, we'll have the zoning administrator reach out to you.
Okay, well, because I've tried to get in touch with people and you just get a big runaround. So another thing is.
That's why we're here tonight.
Yeah, that's why I'm here.
Yeah,
So
thank you.
another thing is with us having the tractor trailers, of course, you have to have a business license, so therefore our address is the house, it's ran out of the house. So with that being said, if we can't have the commercial vehicles in Manassas Park, therefore we don't have to pay for a business license anymore because it's, I mean, I can't have the business in I can't have the business vehicles, so
Right, and
that's
there's,
another question I have.
there actually are further restrictions with the home occupation permit. Are you saying you have a home occupation permit? So the
Correct.
home occupation permit still limits you to a single commercial vehicle.
That's being
because-
changed, though.
Yeah, that we're
Yeah.
working to change that, the same as we're working to change the 9,000 to 10,000. We're working to make more harmony between the ordinances. But the idea of the home occupation permit is to allow you to run a business without your neighbors feeling like you're running a business, right? To preserve the intent of the district and to preserve your neighbor's right to enjoy a residential property. They bought in a residential neighborhood, they didn't buy in a commercial neighborhood, they have a right to enjoy a residential neighborhood. So the purpose of the home occupations restrictions is to make sure that your business isn't actually operating like a business, that it actually runs like a residential home and your neighbors don't have to tolerate a business running out of it. So if there's nothing happening at the house that is actually conducting a business, if you're saying that the only reason you need a home occupation permit is because you have a tractor trailer or a tractor, the only reason you need a home occupation is that if the tractor was no longer there, that would be something for you to discuss with the zoning administrator to see, do I actually need a home occupation permit anymore?
And
Not
I think it
actually.
has to be a bigger picture, because in the tractor trailer has to be, it's in my name, so therefore they think it's, DMV thinks it's Manassas Park, so therefore y'all want y'all's personal property. Well, why should I pay personal property if I can't have a vehicle at my house? Do you get what I'm
But
saying?
you usually pay personal property where it's garaged.
It's garaged at 121 Evans.
Right. So, but she was saying if she moved it,
Yeah, if we
Yeah.
can't garage it there, why pay?
then we wouldn't be
Then you
able to
wouldn't
charge
be
you
paying.
personal
So you can't
property
charge
for it.
personal property.
Correct.
Okay, another thing is, I know y'all think I'm crazy, but y'all are gonna be like, this house. So, I know that y'all have seen it, it's the house on 120 Evans Street, it sits on the corner of Evans and Crozet. It's, has all these different things, I've seen y'all put it on the, whatever, when people are talking about it. No, it's my mom's, lives there, so she has trailers, but it's because she collects antiques, so therefore she can't have those trailers anymore because they're considered a commercial vehicle.
She can have 2 trailers parked on her driveway.
She has 2 driveways, so that means she can have 4.
No.
I mean, she doesn't
No,
have
it's-
4
The,
trailers.
the, re-
times
the
that.
restriction
on
is
property.
per property, not per driveway. The restriction is per property. So it's 2 commercial vehicles per property. So since a trailer is defined as a commercial vehicle, she can have 2 trailers, but then she can't have any other trailers or commercial vehicles.
All right.
Any other questions?
Mike Smith, 102 Colfax. Just an easy one for you here. On slide 38, I believe this question would be for Mr. Odell. We've got a commercial vehicle, and I know you've talked a few times about pervious versus impervious surface. And we see this frequently. I know you've seen it, where the people have just thrown the gravel all over and parking everywhere. What's community development's current take on the use of gravel in yards to create parking area?
So gravel, and I've battled because of the stormwater aspect. Gravel is not usually considered a pervious surface anymore. But gravel is also, the question is about stability. The code requires it to be on a stable surface. And that's really, again, I'm just the director of the department, I'm not the zoning administrator. Stable usually would imply concrete, asphalt, some other sort of stable material, but we do see people using gravel in commercial lots all the time. The reason I don't like it in residential areas is because it tracks out into the street, becomes a nuisance, and then people get rocks in their windshields and things like that, and it's just not conducive to the crowded residential neighborhood we live in. But I can't give you an interpretation as to whether or not I consider it, even if I told you, it wouldn't matter. It wouldn't hold any force of law for me to say, yes, gravel can be a stable surface, but I guess it really depends on how much gravel you're putting down and how you're restraining it, how you're keeping it from spreading out or just going down into the mud. If it's an actual engineered design that's gonna stay together as an assembly, maybe, but just throwing gravel down is not usually gonna make for a stable surface.
So that at this time, that would or would not be considered a zoning violation?
That would, again, I wish zoning administrator was here, but she's under the weather, has been under the weather all week. So I'm doing my best to go over what I know the law says, but you're asking for interpretations, and I can't give those. It wouldn't do anybody any good, because it wouldn't hold the force of law, so.
Thank you.
Ismael Fuentes, I'm located on Inyo Place, and I have a question. I live on a condominium neighborhood where I do have two car garage, but my cargo van does not fit on the garage. So now I having the issue whether I can park my cargo van in the street, or I can get a permit park in the street. Or we also have a pool parking within the same condominium, which I don't know if I would be allowed to park overnight in there or not.
Yeah, if it's, you're saying it's pooled parking within the condominium, that's not the street. So we wouldn't enforce against that, so that's where you'd be able to park.
Okay,
Right.
so, but there is no permit that I can get?
No, because there's other situations like yours, as long as you have available parking on your site, that's parking, right? The limitation that we have is for lack of driveways, right? But since you have parking, right, so there's some townhouses that have assigned parking spaces, right? You
Yeah.
still have somewhere to park your car, that's why we don't have that exception.
Okay.
Rodeo, Silver Media Court, and West Carondelet. I live in a townhouse complex, and we have an HOA. We have a driveway big enough for one vehicle, okay? I actually drive a commercial van. I work for Handyman, Hamilton Handyman. But I also own a 5x8 trailer that is not used for any kind of commercial purposes at all. And the HOA won't allow us to park that much, only once in a while?
Yeah, that's a consideration you'd have to take up with your HOA. It's the same thing as a private homeowner who's legally renting out their house to someone, and that person has a commercial vehicle. That private owner can say, you're not allowed to park on my driveway as part of that. That's between a private transaction. The HOA is the same way. You'd have to talk to your HOA about changing their rules for those vehicles. I believe the Blooms HOA did, in fact, change their rules based off the city code when this came out, so that would be the best course of action.
So, when I said that was a handsome boat, that's actually my boat. I'm in the same situation. By the HOA rules and Blooms, I can't park that boat in my driveway. And when this law is enforced, I can't park that boat on the street. So I've been, ever since this started happening, I've been in this conundrum, what do I do with it? You know, am I gonna wind up having to sell the boat because I can't park it on the street and I can't park it in the driveway, or am I gonna just pay a rental fee every month to store it? And they're getting pretty ridiculous. So I'm in the same conundrum. I don't know what's gonna happen. Mine's a boat, it's not a utility trailer. You know, the utility trailer you probably need a lot more than I need the boat. So I have a feeling I'm gonna be asked to sell my boat. But I feel for you, but I'm in the exact same situation. The HOA won't let me put it in the driveway, and the city won't let me park it on the street. So I gotta find something to do with it, some way to resolve the situation. It stinks. I mean, it's hard to deal with.
Yeah. Well, good luck with that.
Anybody else? Okay, well, thank you all so much for coming out tonight. We greatly appreciate it. Have a wonderful evening.